Hey. Welcome to another episode of Evolving Perspectives. My name is Mattea Elyse, your podcast host, and on this podcast, we dive deep into the stories of everyday people, discussing the hurdles they face and the triumphs they've achieved. We have real, raw conversations where we laugh, we cry, we uncover the incredible resilience within us all. From overcoming personal setbacks to navigating life's unexpected twists, each episode that you tune into is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to persevere and thrive. Tune in as we share moments of vulnerability, inspiration, and ultimately empowerment. Get ready to be uplifted and inspired as we showcase the unwavering strength of the human heart on Evolving Perspectives. Chime in. Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Evolving Perspectives. My name is Mattea Elyse, and I am your podcast host, and we are here yet again for another amazing episode. You all already know how this goes. I love to give my guests their flowers while they're on this podcast because I believe in celebrating those who walk among us who are doing amazing and great things. My guest today is one who I've known for almost my entire life at this point. And when I think about the impact that she's not made just in my life, but in the lives of those she's touched, all I can think about is the gift of being a giver. One of the things that I have always loved and admired about this person is not just the way that she shows up in spaces, but the fact that she has been a trailblazer in her industry, among her peers, and among everyone that she has been privileged to touch and to know. I am so grateful and so honored to have been in her presence on multiple occasions because when you've experienced her, you've experienced love. She's always so welcoming and always so friendly and always willing to give her very last to make sure that everyone around her is successful and living their best life. I am so honored and privileged to have this powerhouse on my podcast platform on today. And I know that you all are going to thoroughly enjoy our conversation today. So if you all would give a warm welcome to my amazing guest, Miss Debbie Washington, thank you for being a part. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Mattea. I hope I live up to all those gracious words that you've used for me, but I am equally excited and equally honored to be able to be on your podcast and have a good conversation with you.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad that you're here. And before we get started, of course, I've known you for a number of years, but I want you to tell our audience who you are, who may not be familiar, who you are, what you do, what you got going on in your life right now. If you'll share that with us.
Sure. So I am, again, Deborah Washington. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother. I am the CEO and owner of Strategic Business Services, which is a consulting firm. I moved out of into what should be considered retirement about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I felt led to, I've always worked in a space. I've been working in the C-suite, CEO, COO for over 35 years. And part of that, I owned my own company previously and then merged in with some others. But after my last stint of being CEO for about 6 or 7 years, I knew I was ready to slow down. I thought a little bit. And so in that, I really had a passion to help because in that space, I often dealt with subcontractors, smaller companies, mid-sized companies, a lot of minority owned firms. And unfortunately, some of the opportunities that I would want to offer them, they were not set up correctly to be able to handle it. And so having been engaged in that, I really developed a passion to do what I was doing for the company I was with, but do it for various other organizations that were trying to get their foot in the door, trying to get off the ground. And so that's what strategic business is. It is a consulting firm that shows and guides you through growth and sustainability, but gets into the trenches of how you're operating, what things you need to change, whether if you want to pivot, covers everything from basic business plans all the way up to your marketing strategies, your funding, all those things. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I said a wife. I'm married to the amazing Kenneth Washington.
Yes.
We just celebrated this year 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have 2 grown sons and 1 goddaughter, / daughter, because if
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have had a daughter better if I had a birthed her myself.
Yeah.
So those
He's
are my,
definitely your twin.
yeah. And so, and I've got, you know what, Mattea, I have trouble counting, somewhere between 16 and 18 grandchildren. Two of my children, my oldest son and my daughter, are a product of a merged family, blended family.
Mm-hmm.
So they added to their numbers. And so the numbers keep going up. I told them I'm starting to feel like the little old lady in the shoe that had so many children. But they do help in keeping me young. So they
That's
do
right.
keep me up to date with a lot of the things that are going on. So that's who I am. I am a licensed minister.
Yes.
What I do for business, I do it as under marketplace ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that God called all of us to be owners, but I believe that he called us for a different reason, is to be able to operate in business and bring him into the marketplace and into the business world. Bring him to people that don't go to traditional churches, might not hear, but be such an example that they would want to know more about our lives and how we operate.
I absolutely love that. I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking about as we were preparing for this particular episode, and I remember one of my fondest memories of you when I first met you. I probably was a college student, maybe between the ages of 18 and 20 years old. And the church that we attended at the time was having like a financial seminar or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you and your husband were one of the speakers or presenters at the conference. And it was such a sacrifice for me to go because, of course, it was a fee associated with it. And I really ain't had no money. I'm be honest. You know, I scraped up my little coins and I don't even know how much it was, but whatever it was, I scraped up my coins. Okay. Yeah. Just because I was like, I need to be in the place, because one thing that I've always had this mindset of, and Pastor Lockett used to always say, you got to sow where you want to go. Right. And so I was in this mindset, like, I know I'm not there. I'm not even close because I'm still in school. But what I do know is I'm going to get everything that I can. And one of my first encounters with you at that session really changed the way that I saw myself as an individual and the way that I wanted to be seen as a business professional and what you said, a marketplace minister. And so I say that because I was telling my husband yesterday, I said to Brian, I said, honestly, I think that Miss Debbie was like the first person that I ever met who was a female, who was a minority Black, and who was a CEO. And I mean, I was so like personal, like you read about people. And of course, social media was not what it was or what it is now then. And so, you didn't have all that. But when I thought about, just when people use these words, boss chick and boss girl or diva boss and all these things, I'm like, Miss Debbie was that baby when it wasn't even popular. Okay. When didn't nobody know what it was. Sis, her picture should have been beside that word as the originator. Okay. And so I am so grateful for your example and the consistency of your example. And I know one of the things that you shared during that session, I will never forget, is just the challenges that you had to get to where you were, you know what I mean? And being a woman, of course, because I mean, let's be honest, it's 2024 and people still are looking at women kind of like, really? Minority? Really? Yeah. And for you to have made those type of impacts and those strides, even way back then, was so inspiring for me. And the other thing that really always encouraged me, and when I think about so many things, I hope I don't get too teary, but think about so many things where I always tell people to trust their journey, because even I remember before my husband and I got together, you were the CEO. I think at the time you maybe even owned the company. I'm not sure because I can't remember the details. I was younger then. And you all had a big project that you were working on. And you had gathered like all of the young men and women and just different people that you knew to work this, assignment, this job. And
Yeah.
I was saying to myself, that's it. It's one thing to get to the top, but it's a whole nother thing to bring people along with you. And it was
Absolutely.
like it was an opportunity for you, but then you gave an opportunity for other people. And I'm like, that's what being a boss really is about. It just ain't about a title. It's
That's
about
right.
who I can bring along with me. And I saw you walk out that model. And just honestly speaking, some of the people that I knew personally who was, a part of that team that worked that particular, assignment was like, this right here, I needed this money. I
Right.
needed these coins. You know what I mean? Because they were
Yeah.
college students, they were young, just different things. And you provided that. And I think that so many times in leadership, and now you see people wanting to be a boss and wanting to own their own thing, and they want their name in lights, but they don't really understand the magnitude and the responsibility that truly comes along with that assignment. But I would love for you to share just how you even took on that mindset, that concept. I was trying to say mindset and concept at the same time, but that mindset and concept to say, you know what, this is not just about me elevating myself in my career, but how can I help the masses? Would you share share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really blesses and touches me to know, because sometimes you don't know who's watching, you don't know who noticed. And I didn't do it to be noticed or any of those things. I did it because it's just always been a part of me. I didn't come into where I am through an easy road. The industry that I was in for 30 plus years back then, we're talking in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was a male dominated industry. So being at the top, or getting to the top as a female, was a tough road, because in the beginning, you didn't get the same respect. It was almost like, well, they probably gave her this position to meet the quotas and whatever else, but she really doesn't know. And so I made it a real important that I just not got the position, but I owned the position, that I deserved the position, that I did the work for the position. And I've always had a heart, like what I'm doing now. I've always had a heart to help those. If we are blessed to get through a door, and we don't keep a foot in that door to let somebody else in, then I have a real issue with that, because it's what helped me. Somebody, brought me along. And so the company that you're talking about then, no, I didn't own it. I was the COO of it, but I didn't own the company. And it was a minority owned firm. It was the first time I've ever worked for a minority owned firm. So it opened me up to a new venue of how things operate. And being a part of a ministry that had so many people in it, young people, middle-aged people, people that needed assistance and help. And it was a passion of mine. Like, it's a passion for me now to help these companies. It was a passion of mine to bring folks along. It wasn't just, Mattea, for them to make the money. It was for them to see what it looked like to move in that kind of space. It was to give them a hunger for where they could get to, because, I was just everyday people. People talk about how they saw me, but to me, I was just an everyday person out here trying to make it work and doing the best that I could. And so, but for me, exposing them, because the owner of that company was owned by a minority that was 51%. And a non-minority that was 49. And I can honestly say they took me under their wing, and they taught me some things, even though I had been in the industry for a while. They taught me things from an ownership standpoint, which prepared me for then later I actually purchased that company. And I
Oh,
ended up
wow.
owning it a few years later. I was with them about 10 years before. So I wanted people to see that it doesn't matter where you start. As long as you keep struggling, you keep going, you keep that mindset of where you can get to. And so I've always been moved by somebody I can see and somebody I can track and somebody that's touchable and real. So not being a part of those opportunities yourself, if you had been there, you would have seen that I worked shoulder to shoulder with these folks. We ate together. We did things together. I talked to them. I encouraged them. Some of them we trained, and I had people helping me. But it wasn't like I brought people along and I'm here and they're there. No, we were
Right.
all in it together, and that allowed them to gain a certain respect, but it also allowed them to say, "Hey, I can do that too." If given the right opportunity, I can get there too. So that was kind of, and it's still my model right now. Whoever you can bring along, bring along. There's room out here for everybody.
You are so right. And one of the things that you shared when we initially started talking was about just the whole purpose of your industry and how, of your business rather, and what you're doing with your company. And I think that one thing that Brian and I have learned and seen so much, even in our, I say short time, because of course, we've owned our funeral home for 7 years now, but have been, in entrepreneurship, for a number of years. But of course, everybody's, thing is different, right?
Mhm.
But one thing that Brian and I, and it's not really funny at all, but one thing Brian and I have seen, as we've engaged with different entrepreneurs and people who own their own business, we often have this saying that we'll say amongst ourselves is, just because you can don't mean you should. And
Exactly.
and the reason that we say that is because you see so many people who truly are skilled at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
but they have no clue. And not to say I'm the expert, because I'm learning as I go too. But one
Right.
thing about me is I'm never going to be in a position where I feel like I know everything. I'm going to reach out to somebody, connect with somebody, ask a question, because what I'm not getting ready to do is be out here looking crazy.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, for us, it's always like, I see where you're going, but if you just had a little bit, and if you could just, and I really think that what you're doing is so very important, because there are so many people, and you saw it especially during COVID and all of that, where people had great businesses, but to be honest, they never had a plan.
Right.
Now, some
Right.
people, of course, were just hit, and I mean, you just couldn't recover. But
Right.
then there are other people, it was like, if you would have planned a little bit more strategically,
Absolutely.
you would at least have been able to sustain. You may not have
Exactly.
been,
Right.
making the strides or the gains that you wanted, but you would have at least been able to sustain. And so I think what you're doing is so very important, because we need that as minorities. Unfortunately, as much as people like to say everybody is created equal and everybody has the same opportunities, the reality is that's just not always the case. And some of it's based upon the way you were brought up, your environment, just your ignorance, and ignorance meaning just not
Just not
knowing.
knowing.
You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, even with Brian and I, we've made a number of mistakes in business, but thank God we had enough wisdom and knowledge to reach out to the appropriate people to
Mm-hmm.
resolve those things, to move in a different way. So it's like, okay, we don't make that mistake again. How can we make sure that we're seeing those numbers go up and that we're not living in the red? Because one thing,
Exactly.
Brian and I were like, we said we made this pact to ourselves, is that when we start this business, we are giving ourselves 5 years. That was kind of like our thing. We giving
Mm-hmm.
ourselves 5 years. Because Pastor Locke used to always say, one thing about it is, go on and try it. If it don't
Exactly.
work, you're young enough to start something else.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
whatever young is to you, right? You know what
That's
I'm
right.
saying? And so
That's
that's
right.
really kind of the motto and the mantra that we took on. Like, we're gonna get us 5 years. If we ain't seeing no plus signs and that
Right.
account at least moving in the right direction, okay, we're gonna go ahead and pivot, like you said. But
Yes.
I want you to talk to us about that, because so many times in business, people are so focused and have this single vision or tunnel vision outlook of life when it comes to their business that they're not able to pivot. But I would really like for you to share with us maybe some things that you've maybe taken on or that you help other people to do to see and when to pivot and what that looks like in their business.
Okay, sure. So with the organization that I was with before I retired out, I've been in the facility management arena for almost my entire career. So it's a facility management company. They provided services like janitorial, snow removal, landscaping, plumbing, all for commercial buildings, HVAC, electrical, all those types of things. So we get hit by COVID, and of course, places are shut down. Mm-hmm. So some of the places that, we would have been normally servicing were not even open to be serviced. And then there were some that were open and they needed additional services, and some needed limited services. So I saw, in the beginning, once they started announcing the shutdowns, and most of our contracts were with government and federal type entities, but I saw the potential of how that could affect, the business. And so what I did see was that there was quite a surge in products, especially for our industry, like what we call PPE, personal protective equipment. Mm-hmm. So there were things like gloves and sanitizers and masks, and even for medical places, hospital gowns, disposable things that people needed. And so through some relationship and another person that was a part of the organization with me, we decided to pivot and start selling those products. Instead of just doing the service. And believe it or not, we ended up with a probably 30% increase during COVID, as opposed to going backwards. But, it's the ability to recognize that you need to pivot. First of all, secondly is what is an organic pivot for you? We couldn't have jumped from what we were doing to provide medical services and things of that nature, because that didn't fit. So we had to look at, and those products and things were things that we used. So not only were we able to pivot and sell them to others, but we were able to get them for ourselves at a cost, which drove some of our costs down on that side as well as others. So I always say, at some point, it doesn't matter. If you look at some of the major organizations, they start out at one thing, and then they end up going on to something else, to something else. And those are just like natural pivots. It's because sometimes you're forced into a pivot because what you started with is either dying out, not working, not whatever. Right. And then you have to decide, how do I stay alive in this? How do I, do? Yes. And so that's part of what I help companies with is, if you're going to pivot, let's see what fits best. Are you going to pivot to the left? Are you going to pivot to the right? Are you going to reach this way or that way? And what would be the most cost effective and bring you the best profitability that you can do seamlessly within? And so it worked out very well for us. And I bet it got us through the process, and, which is a blessing. And I always say to people, keep your relationships open to where you have the respect of people that will trust you, because it was a conversation with someone that, said to me, what are you doing about this? And what are you doing about that? And then they mentioned, that there was this forecast of how much was going to be spent on some of these things that were needed, household wise and business wise. And so that just kind of sparked an idea of like, hey, let's get ahead of this curve. And so so that's an example of a successful pivot. If that's, I hope I answered your question.
No, you definitely answered my question. And I love that example. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. And one of the things that I absolutely love about you, and let me just say this, there are many people out here who coach, who do consulting work and all the things, right? Mm-hmm. But there are very few people who have receipts. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing for me. I'm really, really big on education and trainings and all that type of thing. But what I'm finding more and more is everybody is a consultant, everybody is a coach, everybody, is doing all these things. I'm like, but where your receipts at? But one thing
Yeah.
I can say about you, Miss Debbie, is that with you, I'm so glad that you're on here. And not that anybody needed, confirmation that you are a good fit for them and their business. But I think these type of platforms give people an opportunity to really hear the heart of those that they're connecting with. So I'm
Absolutely.
so glad that came on the podcast today just to kind of share with us who you are, what you represent, and what your current business can do for other business owners. And I'm
Mhm.
so grateful that you not only bring history, as far as your commitment to the industries that you worked in, but also the receipts, the compassion, the care, and all the things. And so I
Yeah.
think that is vitally important, even as for those who are business owners. And you may be saying to yourself, like, I know I got a good product in my hand. I know I'm passionate about it, but I just feel like I need somebody to just help me take it to the next level. I really
Mhm.
feel like, Miss Debbie, your company will help each business that connects with you to take them to the next level. And I know you have, a mentorship program or something that's getting ready to come up.
Yes, we
Yes.
added that. Yeah, we added we finished our first one about probably 6 weeks or so ago, but the Lord kind of put it on my heart that there were people that might not might not have the comfortability of just calling and saying, can I get an appointment, and laying out their stuff and saying, this is what I need help with. And then also not maybe not having the affordability to be able
Hmm.
to bring a me in, even though I would get them to the next level. You got to live where you are. So,
Right.
and I try my best to work with people as best I can. But I was at a couple of conferences and I spoke a couple of times. And after that, I had people approach me and say, do you coach? Do you do it? And I said to them, I don't consider myself in the coaching arena. I just think it's over flooded right now. No
Hmm.
offense to any coaches or anything,
No, I
but
get it.
yeah, it's kind of, but what I went back and I was praying about that, and I said, you know what? I might not want to coach, but I would love to mentor some of these people and be able to
Yes.
mentor them in a formalized way that could help them. So I sat down and started putting together some of the top things that stop people from getting to where they want to get to in an organization or in a company that they start. One is how do you structure? Should I be an LLC? Should I be an S Corp? Should I be a C Corp? What does that kind of look like? What are the advantages of one for the other and for my industry? Another one being business plans. Do I understand a business plan? There's different types of business plan. There's a certain type that you need if you're going for an investment or for money. There's a different one just to keep you on track with what you're doing. And then there are others just to be able to show your vision and things out. So just teaching them and showing them the different aspects of a business plan. Certifications. And Mattea, that's big because I deal with a lot of minorities. And some people think because I'm a minority and I own this company, then I am able to get contracts that are made for minorities. But if you don't certify as a minority, you might as well not be a minority. So there is a
Oh.
certification. There are organizations that are recognized that certifies you, even for your industry, as a Black owned, minority owned service. And so there's huge amounts of dollars that are set aside on the private sector, on the public side, through government that says these dollars have to be used with minority firms because we want to make sure that they see that we are investing back into minority. Well, you can't go after that if you're not certified. And that certification process, for some things, it could be a little cumbersome. For
Hmm.
others, it's pretty simplistic. It's a matter of, if you've been operating, it's a matter of answering the questions, providing the documents, and going through that process. So I teach a lot on the importance of getting certified for what works for your industry. We teach on funding. What do you have to look like to get money? And where is the money? Because there's a lot of grants out
That
here
part.
for profit and not for profit. And so there's that. And then marketing strategies. How are you telling your story? How's your business getting out there? What's the best strategy for you? Social media is not made for every service and every type of industry. So there are other things, yours might be better doing small ads, doing certain things. You might be better doing some things at different functions and sponsoring stuff to get your name out. So we talk about the marketing aspect of it. And we talk about collaboration, because one of the things that, especially with minority organizations, everybody wants to be the big guy. I want to be the top. This is my company, and I want this contract for my company. And I always tell them that, 100% of nothing is still nothing. 50% of a million is a whole lot better.
Hey.
And so I talk about collaborating, finding other. And so, so I have a mentorship class that is starting the week of November 11th. It's offered on 2 days. It's offered on Monday, the 11th. It starts, and on the 14th. It runs for 6 weeks. It's simultaneously. So you get to choose when you register whether you want to go a Monday or whether you want to go a Thursday. The classes are taught the same each week. So if one of the weeks you have a conflict, you could always jump to the other schedule and still get the same information. And we walk through the last one was so successful. I have a couple of companies that have collaborated with other folks who were just in that group and did some things together.
Awesome.
I've got a couple of them that have gone through certification processes. Now, I do offer the certification process for those who cannot get through it on their own. I do that as a part of one of my services. I have another one that is now almost finished building their website. For things that we told them, and so I also, in addition to the 6 weeks, everybody gets a 1-hour consultation with me individually, where I talk specifically about your business and what those things. So it is successful. It's something that God has put on my heart, and it's my pour back into companies, just to kind of give them an idea of what you're doing is good, but what you're missing is this, and this. And let's see how we can get you past some of those things, or get some of those things on board for you so that you can take it to the next level.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I feel like that's one of the components that so many businesses are missing. It's almost like, to be honest, you have those situations where people are like, I need you to hold my hand. And I really feel like that a lot of times I see things in analogy. And so I really feel like what you're doing and with your business is you really are allowing yourself to hold other people's hand through their matriculation of building their company, sustaining their company, and taking their company to the next level. And sometimes you just need that, a Instagram post, a social media post is not going to save your business. Exactly. You need someone to help you create a plan, a successful plan, a detailed plan, a strategic plan to take your business from mediocre to great. And it could be something very similar, very simple, like what you said. It's like, okay, yes, there are a lot of things that's out there, because social media will tell you all the time, oh, get this grant, get this, oh, is this money available? And I know that I was going through this thing at one point, because I would see all of that, and I'm like, but where is it at? I mean, y'all keep saying it. I'm like, but where's the money at?
Who's giving it away?
Who's giving it away? I just went to the bank. They like, nah, sis, it ain't over here. I'm like, where's the money? And so it's like you hear all these people who are successful, their businesses are thriving, they're doing all these things. You see expansion. And I'm like, but where'd you get the money from? People don't tell you that part. You know what I'm saying? And so, just thinking about all of those things, I think even when a lot of people get into business, they have a very limited view on what their business actually can do and can do for them. You know what I mean? And so even with myself, Brian and I talk about this all the time. Like, for us, our next level is, how can we make our business work better for us? Because we have been very hands-on with our businesses. So what does it look like for us to not transition out to hand it to somebody, but to do
Mhm.
more delegation and to be able to,
Exactly.
because we're like, there's more than what we can do. And especially
Mhm.
with me being behind, not so much with the funeral home, but more even with me being a hairstylist, I'm like, okay, I have two hands. I've been standing
Right.
on my feet for over 20 years at this point. Okay, I need to
Right.
transition to something else, you know,
Right.
and I'm doing all the things, but it just is what it is. There's a cap as to what I can do. So what does my next look like?
Look
You know,
like.
and even having someone like you know, to be a part of my team to say, okay, Miss Debbie, what do you suggest? Or what do you think? Or what do you think would be lucrative? Because, you know, I'm on this whole thing I've always been on. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
It doesn't make
And
sense.
so so I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, all these
Yes.
little things is cute, but I'm like, where the money
Yeah.
at? You know,
Yeah.
and it's not that I'm, you know, consumed with money or getting money, but the reality is you need money to live and survive and to set ourselves up for our next
Absolutely.
generation. It just is what it
Absolutely.
is. And so many times money is such a taboo topic or such a taboo word, but the reality is it takes money to do all the things that we need to do, and
Yes.
also even for the visions that God gives us to fund those things. Because I mean, yes,
Absolutely.
miracles do happen, but at the same time, you know, He's given us the power to get wealth. So how do we obtain that wealth? Through the
Wealth.
talents, the gifts, the knowledge, the wisdom, the education, and things like
Yeah.
that that's provided through services and all the things so that we can expand and make the impacts that, you know, He definitely desires us to have in the
Right.
earth. And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful that you shared all of that with us. But one thing that I think that a lot of people struggle with, and this is shifting a little bit, is, you know, like I said, I've always seen you as, of course, a CEO, you know, a boss lady, like that's all the things. But how do you, I think, and I'll say even for myself, one of the things that I've struggled with, and this is a very transparent moment, one of the things I've struggled with, and I'm now shifting my perspective, right?
Mhm.
Is I have a desire to be successful, but sometimes I fear being successful. And the
Mm.
reason I fear being successful is because I'm like, but I love being a mom and I love being a wife. And I
Mhm.
don't ever want my family to feel like me being a platform motivational speaker or me being a platform hairstylist or whatever the thing is to overshadow the things that I know that I've committed to. Like,
Right.
how do you really handle being CEO? Because I mean, I know personally, because I've seen, you know, you in action. You're very family oriented and your family is
Mm.
everything to you. But sometimes I struggle with that. And with you, how have you handled still being very present in your children and your family's lives, as well as still being the CEO? Like
Mhm.
that's something that a lot of people have a problem with balancing the two. What does that look like for you, Miss Debbie?
Well, for now, it's a lot easier because I don't have
Oh
the
yeah.
children and the things now. So it does.
Right, right,
But even with that, Mattia, it's important for me to have balance. So I don't have the children, but I have a husband and I
right.
have friends and I'm part of different women's social groups and different things. So there's things I'd like to do and make sure I have time for outside of business of what the
Hmm.
business is. But I think one of the key things is knowing what your priorities are. So listening to you and having walked that space, your priority is to make sure that your family unit is well taken care of and that you're not stealing any time away from them. So sometimes that is balanced with, do you have a good support system? Do you have
Hmm.
other people that are part of that village that can help you? So you have to set your priorities. When I was coming up the ranks, I had the boys, and Kenny, my youngest one, was very much sports or involved, and so he was junior varsity basketball, football, varsity basketball, football, and then Ruel, being more on the scholastic side, was part of debate teams and leadership things and stuff going through. And so I wanted to be able to be involved and be able to attend certain things, but I realized I couldn't do everything. So
Yeah.
they had grandparents, and one lived right in the same township we were in. The others we convinced to move from New York and come down so they could help. So I didn't miss everything, but I didn't make everything either. But between my husband and I, we would kind of shift that. So, and then I tell people all the time, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. What do you do with the time that you do have? So you set aside that time for what your priorities are, and you make the most of it.
Yeah.
If this is my time, then I'm going to structure that time. We're going to do some things that you want to do. We're going to do some things that bring us closer together, that do certain exercises and certain things like that. So I think that is key for us, more so as women than it is for men, because
Exactly.
we're just like the family bond. We're the ones that keep everything together. So it's knowing, if you're at a season where your children are young and that's a concern of yours, then you have to kind of balance that with, I might not get to this in 3 years, but I can get to it in 6. So in 3 years, I'm going to get to this space, and I'm going to get to this space because that will allow me what I need with my children and stuff. But then once they get, let's say, to high school and that, now I can step this up a little bit, because to be honest, as your kids grow, they want less of you than you want of them. They get involved in their own stuff. They've got their own friends, their own organizations, their own things. So time does start to free up for you. And I say to women all the time, don't make your children, family, the entirety, because they're going to go on and start their own. And if you haven't incubated and had something that fulfilled that void for you, you're going to be sitting there like, wanting to show up at everything they're at. And they're like, Mom, this ain't really for you. So it's a mess. So that would be, it's a priority setting for everybody in whatever season that you're in. And I don't know how much time we left, but you hit on something that I did want to say.
Okay.
When you talked about, I'm big on growth, but I'm super big on sustainability. So people, you can grow, but if you can't sustain where you're growing, where you grow to, it doesn't really work for you. And so a lot of people just look at, how can I get there? But they don't look at, how can I stay there? And how can I keep going, bigger and bigger? And so
say that one again, Miss Debbie.
Yeah, like you can get there, but you got to figure out, how do I stay there? So real transparent, I'm going to tell you, and how do I keep, if once I get there and I'm staying there, how do I get to the next and stay there? How do I get to the next and stay there and still be able to build? And so when I bought the company from my owners, and that's a story in itself, you can do another podcast on that, because that's but when I bought the company, I was very good. I was the catalyst for their growth over 10 years. I took them from, I want to say, less than $1 million to over $20 million by the time I got ready to buy it. And then we lost a big contract, which made it a little easier. That's another story. But in that, when I took it over, I knew everything about running it. I knew everything about the day-to-day, what you got to do, how do you get the right people, what do you do with our equipment, how do you market, and how do you get these contracts in. I didn't realize that I didn't know enough about the financial piece. So, and that is so key in sustainability, is knowing what you can afford to do at each level of where you're at. So I was so good at getting business, Mattea, that I was landing, after I bought it, I was landing contract after contract. It didn't dawn on me that in my industry, it's a contractual service. So you have to provide that service for 30 days before you can bill it. And then they have 30 days to pay you before so now you're looking at 60 days. Now you could be running a contract that had 25 or 30 people on it. You're talking about 5-6 payrolls that you've got to meet before you get $1 back in the door from that contract. And so I was so focused on getting the business that I got to a point where it's like, what am I going to do? I got to pay these folks. I got to do this stuff. And so I had I had fortunate to be able to have some friends and people around me that kind of helped me out, but it taught me a valuable lesson. You can outpace yourself, which will
Ooh.
kill your sustainability. So you got to be able to know, if
Ooh.
I get this on, can I sustain this? If they don't pay me, because paying in 30 days is like best case scenario. You could bill and they could pay you 60 days later. Or you
Right.
got, now you've added on
Right.
2 more payrolls. Yeah. So you got to know, what do I have in credit lines? What is affordable for me? Where do I reach to? And you got to kind of pace yourself, because I can't go after that, because I don't have enough in my financial arena right now to be able to do that. And so I tell people all the time, when going through some of my management courses, there's something I learned back way back. I was probably in my late 20s or so in management, that there is a phrase called OPE, and it stands for other people's experiences. Most people think that that life and is the best experience teacher, that doing it and having the experience. It is so much value in seeing other people's experiences and learning from another, because pretty much
So
if your situation is pretty much close to what my situation is, and I ended up choking, chances are you're going to end up choking. So why make that an experience you've got to experience, instead of saying, what do I need to do different?
that part.
If I can't take this on now, I can structure myself so in 3 years I can go after this contract and I'll be in better shape. But this is not right. Or if I want to go after it, when we talked about collaboration, let me find another partner that'll go after this with me. So now it's not just my money, it's my money and somebody else's money, and we can make each other, sustainable that way. So I did want to, talk, that's some of what we go over in the classes. You just can't look at growth. You got to look at sustain, because you can keep doing this up and down, and that's not success. Yeah.
You are so that's so good. That is so good. Wow, that right there, that was what they say, put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because that is so true, because everybody wants to see exponential growth. And of course, in business, that's what you want to do. But if you grow and you like you said, outpace yourself or outgrow, you outpace what what you're trying to achieve. It's like, it doesn't even matter that you have all of this, just say money. And Brian and I, we talk about that so often, especially when it comes down to, of course, the funeral industry, because we see it so often where, unfortunately, there are certain, companies, and you're saying to yourself, how are you even making any money? Because I know what our expenses look like. And because once you've been in business and you start seeing numbers, that's all you can see is stuff in numbers. So it's not that you're money driven, but every time you look at it, it's like you have to be. And you think about, like how you bring on people, how you do their pay. It sounds good to say, oh, we can pay da 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 da, or we can give da 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 da, or we do da 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 da. But it's like, okay, so who paying for that? You know what I mean? And so even with us, like, we're very much into giving back to our community and all the things. But when we first got started, Brian and I were like using our personal money to do all of these community-led events. It wasn't with no one community-led. It was us led, supporting the community, which was fine, because that's just who we are as people. But then when of course, it gets bigger and bigger every time, because it's like, you got to make it bigger, you got to make it better. And then you're like, okay, now how much did we spend on this? Now, what is this? We need to get.
What is our return on that?
Right, what's our return on this? Like, listen, what's the ROI on this? We need to see, because it's all of those things you start calculating, and you're like, okay, then it can become like this whole leak in your bucket, and you're like, I thought I had, what happened? And it can happen. It can happen so quickly. You know what I mean? It's almost like when you're on the weight loss program. It took you, years, or not even years. It seemed like you can gain weight so quickly. Then you start trying to lose weight. You're like, Lord, I only lost 1 pound this week.
I know. Was eating it. And I've been starving for 3 weeks, and this is all I got.
And it's like that when it comes to business. It's like you feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And one thing. And when you start looking at your numbers, and the numbers is going in the opposite direction, you're like, what is the world is happening? And so, it really does make you reevaluate how you do business. So because of those, mistakes that we made in the beginning, it made us like really have to pivot in how we
Right.
operated our business. Like, okay, in order for us to sustain, this is the way we need to move forward. And
Right.
I think that's such a great way, even for us as we conclude this
Mhm.
conversation today, even in life. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times people want to get rich quick and they want to get to their expected end, but they never think about, how do I sustain this?
Yes.
Whether it's in your life, in your family, in your work, in your finances, in your marriage, in your
Mhm.
relationships, in your day-to-day engagements.
Mhm.
You want to get somewhere quickly. You want to see, everything growing and big and large. That's the goal for everybody. But even
Right.
after you get there, how are you going to sustain it? And
Absolutely.
so I think that's
And that's a different slant, Mattea, if I could interrupt you
yeah.
on your
Go
statement.
ahead. Go
You
ahead.
made a statement that said that everybody, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So I can actually put that over into this. Just because you can get the business doesn't mean that you should get the business at this time. So, that kind of works over on that side too. You have to look and say, yeah, I've got some connections. I've got some people there. They'll give me this contract, but you got to say, should I? you know,
Right.
is this the right time for me, to be able to do
Yes.
that? So I thought, because you made that statement, it's good for some of that, but it's also a good statement for this. Just everything you can do doesn't mean you should do it at that time. And that's what you got to kind of look at when it comes to sustainability. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was excellent. Miss Debbie, thank you so much for joining me today on Evolving Perspective Podcast. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to connect with you. If you'll share your website or your social media handles, or how you want people to connect with you, and even maybe register for your upcoming class, that would be awesome.
Okay, so my website is www.strategicbiz, and that's BIZ with a zebra, solution.com. So that takes you to my website. That website will kind of tell you everything. It'll even give you my email. It will also give you, there is a mentorship page on that website. That mentorship page will be able to get you into registration. Registration is open. It is filling. So remember, registration, if you're interested, please jump into it as quick as possible. I don't know when I'll be running the next one. You can find me on Facebook, just under my name, Deborah Washington. You can find me on Instagram as Deb Ken Wash. It's DEBKEN Wash. I have a company Instagram and a company Facebook, but to be honest, there's so many people on my personal that haven't flipped over. I just give
Yeah.
the personal until I can get that up and running.
Same.
And you can find me on LinkedIn, just under my name. It's Deborah Washington, CEO. So yeah, I look forward. I pray that this reaches to those who need it. And I'd say to people, invest in yourselves. Invest
Yes.
in learning the things that you need to learn. Don't look at everything as an opportunity to get money and hoard money, but pour some money back into yourself so that you know that you're going and heading in the right direction. And I appreciate you,
Absolutely.
Mattea. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're so welcome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing this time and space with us. And thank you all for listening to Evolving Perspective Podcast. This has been an incredible episode. And I say this probably on every episode, but this is one that you definitely want to put on repeat. But not just put on repeat, I want you to share this, with someone. I want to make sure that you're sharing this, not just with your family and friends, but maybe you're a business owner that you're like, what, you're doing a good job, but I heard this lady and they were talking, and it may be a little beneficial, and you can say it in a way that's not offensive, but because it's like, girl, you need this, we don't need that. But it's a way to share, share the love is what we're saying. We're sharing
Yes.
the love because we want everybody to, to be successful in all the endeavors that they put their hands to do, especially when you've been called to do something and you have a passion for it. So it's always, we all have areas of growth. And this is just one of those conversations that you can definitely slide to someone who may need a little bit more help in moving their business to the next level. Thank you so much, Miss Debbie. Once again, thank you all for listening. And as I always like to say at the end of every single podcast, always remember to keep evolving. Until next time, you all be easy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning into Evolving Perspectives. Remember to like, subscribe, download, and share with your friends and family about our episode that releases every single Monday. And always remember to keep evolving. Until next time, be easy.